So here's my athlete of the games. I've been saying this for the last 4 days, that if Tejaswin Shankar manages to win a medal with the condition that I saw him in 4 days back, it would be a miracle medal. And he's managed to do that. How, why, it's time to decode. This is going to be a proper, candid conversation. That day, you were there at the reception, and I was behind you. And the receptionist told you, congratulations on the medal. And there was a fleeting silence for a second, and you said, my buddy has won it. And you showed Sarvesh. Both of us had an eye contact. I put my head down. You went out with Wayne Lombard. From there to here, it's unbelievable. I think it's sunk in now. If it hasn't, at least tell me what you went through.
No, absolutely, sir. I'm actually surprised that you remember that that particular moment from that particular day, because that was the day after the high jump finals when I had to pull out because of the flare up in my knee. And at that moment, I just walked down, or I guess come down the lift to get some of my family members up, and I was just about to see Dr. Padiwala just to get an idea of whether if I'm able to compete, not compete, what's the actual status of my knee. So there were so many questions, so many uncertainties. So at that point, for the receptionist to ask me that question was, I just wasn't expecting any of that. And obviously I saw you there and Sarvesh was there. So I wouldn't say it was an awkward conversation, but that definitely was a moment where I was like, that was the sink-in moment for me, ke bas khatam ho gaya high jump final and there's no more high jump for you in this competition. And then obviously from that point on, the next 48 hours were, full of ups and downs. And to start on the 30th, again, I just don't know how I finished the decathlon and let alone winning a medal. I don't know how it happened.
No, I mean, it's time to actually take you back. I mean, because I've also been talking to Dr. Padiwala. I've been asking him, possible. Tell me a little bit more, because, everyone wants to know. Because what you went through, when you met him, Wayne, obviously the contribution of Wayne Lombard and Dr. Padiwala. Give us the lowdown, TJ, because this is an inspirational story, not just for you, for every one of us, that it's possible. If you want it deep inside, it's possible.
Yeah, so if I take you, moment by moment, there were a lot of things that happened behind the scenes, which obviously no one really knows, but at the same time were very detrimental in me competing. So after I saw you, in the lobby, I went back up and Dr. Padiwala checked my knee, and the whole reason for him checking my knee was to make sure if it's safe to compete or not.
Yeah.
He told me, "Bhai, listen, the tendon is intact. There's actually no real injury to it. So even if you compete, there's not going to be any rupture or any risk of that sort. You might be in pain. You might be in incredible pain. But if you can brave the pain, or if we try and work out the anti-inflammatories, if those things work and they kick in, which he was very confident they would, then I'd be able to compete. But there will be an element of pain that you have to kind of push through." And at that point, the moment he said there's no real risk of any significant injury, that's when I decided, bhai, ab to we have to give it a shot. And obviously, there was no... To be honest with you, I'd probably given up mentally. That morning was very difficult for me, because when I woke up, in my mind, I'd probably 60% given up that I was not going to compete. But that's when I met Sri Shankar Murali, and he was the one guy who, I think I did mention this yesterday also, had anybody told me anything, I probably would have just said, chalo theek hai yaar. I mean, they're just trying to be nice. But Shri telling me that, because he's been through the same injury to a greater magnitude, and for him to tell me, bhai, just take one event at a time. You don't have to think about winning a medal or completing the decathlon. Just start with the 100, or don't even start. Just warm up for the 100, see how you feel. Once you sit in the starting block, things will start happening. And that's the only thing that I took from that situation. And from that point on, it was just one event at a time, one thing at a time. And, once I got the go-ahead from Dr. Padiwala, Chris, who's the team physio here, he was hands-on helping me out. Obviously, Mayur, who's a team physio with us, with the Athletics Federation of India, he's been a gem of a person for the last 2 days. He's strapped me up like a mummy, just making sure that when I get to the starting line, I'm able to, give my best. There was also a reason I put on my sunglasses for the start of the 100, because at that point, I was literally tearing up, but I didn't want anybody to see the fact that, I was tearing up. And as luck would have it, I was in the heat, the 100-meter heats with Damien Warren and Lyndon Victor, two of the greatest athletes to ever grace the sport of decathlon. And for me to be in that position, having to line up with, some of the legends, it was a very overwhelming situation for me, especially considering the fact that I was potentially not at my best physical, capabilities. So yeah, it was very emotional. It was very, it took a lot of time to sink in. And that's probably why my 100-meter race I didn't execute it well. But at that point for me, it was all about, okay, I've started the decathlon, so now let's just take one event at a time and see what happens.
So I have to tell you this. Sri Shankar Murli was with us when you were doing the long jump. We were doing a show. Sri Shankar, his father, Rohan, me and Trisha, and we were having coffee. And you did a 740, I think, first, 742, and then you did a 782. He was having coffee, and he jumps up. I'm like, what happened? He said, sir, 782. Each one of us started celebrating impromptu on a Glasgow street. And he said to me, sir, if he can do 782 in the long jump with this pain, I'm telling you he has a medal. I said, should I say it? He said, bol ke bolo. And then he was so happy. His sister called him and mentioned this, and his whole family started. This is what I loved about this. But how? Because Dr. Padiwala and others told me about the long jump, the high jump, that these are the two, despite it being your strength, will be the most painful. How bad was it?
Yeah, so those two events obviously were extremely important for me. And there's all sorts of decathletes, somebody like Lyndon Victor, he has a really strong discus throw, and everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses. I was more worried about the decathlon because my strengths are the high jump, long jump, and that was the point where I'd get most impacted in my knee and I'd feel the most pain. So the first jump was, I would probably say I was a bit hesitant, and for that to be a 742 jump and for the pain to be not as much as I'd expected, at that point I was like, okay, I can probably push. I knew at that point that I had one more jump in me. So I just went for it, and after I landed, I realized that it was a 782 jump, which I've never done on a perfectly 100% knee. So to do that on an injured knee is even special. So that just tells me maybe I can get the 8-meter barrier too one day in the long jump, I guess.
And there are these kind of moments. And again, when we were, आप coffee पी सकते हो यार. I mean, Rohan is telling me you have the coffee in hand. Well, just go ahead. Two, three other points. I mean, the long jump, high jump was one question I needed to ask. By the way, this I have not heard from Dr. Padiwala. He and I were chatting, but I was told that they had apparently booked a hyperbaric chamber for you. I kept asking people, what is this? Explain to me. They said LeBron James has it in his house. Not 100% proven, but we've tried all this. Can you tell us the steps that you had to go through?
Yeah, this is where I think the magic man, the magic wand of Wayne Lombard comes into the picture. So he's the man behind everything recovery related. And obviously you know this, but I don't know if a lot of people know that he was the man behind Vinesh. He was the man behind PV Sindhu, and he's the man behind Sri Shankar. He's the man behind me, who's always like a pillar standing there, trying to make sure behind the scenes that all of us, all of the good athletes in India are able to do what they do on the field, but he takes everything off of their shoulders, off the field. So he was the one who recommended, and he, out of his way, found some clinic online. We drove 40 minutes just to get there. I said, how's this going to help me recover in my knee? He said, it doesn't matter what happens to the knee. All we're trying to chase is that 1%. And if we add 1, we don't know if it'll help or not, but it'll definitely not hurt. So might as well try. So I think it was less about the hyperbaric chair. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a recovery expert, but in my mind now, when I look back, I think it was more about filling my schedule, filling my 48 hours with things consistently so that I don't think about the knee or the pain. That's how I like to think of it. Now, I don't know how much, all these activities helped me, but they did help take my mind off of the fact that I was injured and I was so busy. Chalo bhai, now we have to do recovery, now we have to do rehab, now we have to do isometrics, now we have to take the pain meds, now we have to go to the physio, get taped. So I had something planned every second, and that's probably what helped me, compete without really thinking about competition.
When you woke up the second day, you had gone through the day one, you were there in contention. Did that kind of sort of tell you that, yes, now that day one has gone, I've done the jump, I can now pull this off?
Physically, yes, because physically my knee had settled the morning of day two, but that's when the decathlon takes its toll, because physically you might be 100%, but my weaker events were yet to come. So I had still the discus to go, I had the pole vault to go, there was rain forecasted at that time, and obviously in the best conditions, I am not a very proficient pole vaulter. But for me to navigate the rain and the wind,
PB there.
I was very close to my personal best. So I think when it's meant to be, it just happens. And sometimes I was even chatting yesterday when I look back to those 48 hours when I was crying in front of the camera, and I was in a very deep spiral. I just didn't know what was going to happen, and I'd gone down a rabbit hole of 2030 and when will I retire and what's going to happen, all that sort of thing. But then 2 days later, for me to finish on the podium with not just win a bronze medal, but to be on the podium with Damien Warner, one of the greatest decathletes, one of the 4 people in world history to go over 9,000 points, Lyndon Victor, one of the greatest decathletes, Olympic bronze medalist, and then you have a little Tejaswin Shankar on the side. So that for me was that feeling where you dream about being in the moon and then you kind of land among the stars. That's kind of what happened there.
But you and the Commonwealth Games is a love story. 25th July 2022, you did not know whether you were going to Birmingham. All of a sudden, you are told you are going. You have told me in the past when you stepped into that Birmingham arena, all you were thinking about is, I don't want to make a fool of myself. Your words, not mine. And then you go on to win a historic bronze there. Here, I had given you 10% chance in one of my pieces and videos. And that is basis what everybody told me. I'm not a recovery person, but when I saw you, I didn't think you, because you weren't well. Mentally you weren't well. I could see the face, and you were limping. You clearly had discomfort. I had given you 10% chance. So Birmingham to this one, you are God's child, my friend. Clearly there is something good. Good things happen to good people. When I think there to here, unreal.
I think so. There's something about the UK, there's something about the Commonwealth Games, and obviously when I saw that tweet that you put out about the 10% chance, in my mind, and obviously some people might get offended, but because you're trying to try and win something, and then you have somebody give you a 10% chance, अरे भाई मैं यहाँ 10% के लिए नहीं आया हूँ. But then what actually was going on in my mind was, अरे यार जितना मैंने सोचा था उससे तो 9% ज़्यादा दे रहे हैं, because in my mind I'd given myself only 1% chance of starting the decathlon. Mind you, not finish and win a medal, starting the decathlon. But yeah, I think that was not demotivating but very motivating for me कि यार 9% ज़्यादा मेरे से दिया है, तो obviously I think even if there's a percent chance in such situations in sports, I think you should take it. But to have a 10% chance, and I feel like at that point it was a sure shot decision. So yeah.
Your best medal so far? You've done many things in life which are a first in Indian sport. Is this going to be one of the best ever?
I don't know. I think it's definitely up there, but I also think that every competition that I go to has kind of a story associated with it, and just like 2022 at that point was probably the highlight of my career. So this point in 2026 is probably the highlight of this year. That's just how I like to think of it, and we're still not through with the year though. Yeah. We still have Asian.
I was about to ask that last question. Asian Games, because we in India, we love our multi-discipline games. We will not follow, unfortunately so, and I hope viewers do follow the Diamond League, follow the World Championships, follow the important competitions, but we follow these kind of games, Asian Games, Commonwealth Games, Olympic Games. So clearly there will be, and now after this medal, which has been celebrated the country over, and I have to say this, you've been celebrated hugely, there will be a lot of focus on the Asian Games.
Yeah, I think so, and I think also, people have been very kind with, towards me. I've been flooded with positive messages, even after I got hurt, till the point now when I won the medal. There have been a lot of positive messages, a lot of people, giving their good wishes. So I think I'd just like to carry that momentum into Asian Games. We have about 6 weeks from this point on. So I'll take about a week off, try to get recovered, recoup, and then just start preparing for the Asian Games. We have about 5 weeks from that point on. So that'll be a big competition. And obviously I want to give my best there and just be ready and be able to represent my country.
Final question. I'll take you back to the high jump. Mentally one is shattered. And yet you were doing what you were doing with Sarvesh. Sarvesh told me about this, that you were telling him, explaining things to him. He said, he's traveled the world. He knew about the conditions. He knew everything. You were guiding him. How difficult was that? I mean, that for me is collective sport or team sport at its absolute best.
To be honest with you, at that point when I was sitting there, and I'm going to be brutally honest, when I was sitting there, I didn't really think about the fact that ke bhai Sarvesh kar raha hai, kaun kar raha hai. Had it not been Sarvesh, had it been somebody else from some other country, I probably would have still sat there and watched the event, because that's probably the best seat in the house. To be honest, there's no other seat better than being right next to the pitch. So I'm definitely a fan of a sport before I'm anything else. But I think the one thing in my mind that I always abide by, believe in, is whenever you win, you want people to cheer you, want people to clap for you. But if somebody else is winning and you are not there to clap for them, then it just doesn't work like that. It's not a one-way street. You can't expect everybody to cheer you, but then when you are in that position to cheer for somebody, and if you don't do that, I think that's just the most disappointing thing that you can do, the most disservice that you can do. So that was one of those moments where I thought to myself, yaar, this is the time where I've been in a position where I should cheer for somebody else or support someone else, because I would expect the same thing. If I'm jumping there, I would expect Sarvesh to be sitting there. If he's in my position, I would expect him to be there, help me out, because we are in this together. Ultimately, we want to win a medal for the country. I would have liked to, been on the podium. Adarsh would have liked to been on the podium also, but that's done now. The person who's actually in contention, we have to try and rally around him and just give him the best shot that he can have. And that's just how I thought in that particular moment. And I didn't really have any other, aspirations of coaching him or anything like that. But at that point, it was all about trying to be there, support, and see what we can do.
Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic is what I will say. That day, we put out a reel, black and white, Tejaswin breaking down, and in color where Tejaswin gets the medal. That's the story, right? The shades of grey. That's the story of sport.
Redemption arc.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I mean, that's the story of sport. Sport can be cruel, but sport always rewards its best devotees. This man is a true devotee of that temple called sport. Well done. Many congratulations. Very proud. Thank you very much. मुझे उसने रोहित राजपाल ने प्रेजेंट किया अच्छा तो उसमें मुझे लगा सबके होंगे बाकी उसमें नहीं ये अलग होगा आपका मैंने ये स्पेशल
Thank you for supporting Indian athletes. We just win 31-7, 2026. Decathlon, third place, Commonwealth Games.